So I really want you to just look at the shoes you're wearing right now.
Right. Or even just think about the smartphone sitting right there on the table next to you.
Yeah, exactly. Because you probably paid a pretty massive premium for those things. I mean, we're talking 100, maybe even $1,000.
Oh, absolutely. But now I want you to try and trace that physical object all the way back to its actual origin.
Right. Imagine a pair of hands. Just rough, calloused hands, completely covered in the dust of a factory floor.
Fingers wrapped in cheap industrial tape, just to stop the heavy thread from cutting into the skin.
Yeah, and those hands are just painstakingly stitching together the materials, hour after hour, pulling this thick thread through really tough synthetic leather.
And now, hold that specific image of those taped, bleeding fingers in your mind.
And right next to it, I want you to imagine the shimmering multi-billion-dollar global sports industry.
Exactly. Just think of the billionaire club owners, or those broadcast deals that are literally worth more than the GDP of entire island nations.
Right, or the pristine, high-tech stadiums in Europe. I mean, you see the contrast, right?
It's massive.
Yeah.
And we've all been sold this very specific, very comforting story about how the world works.
Yeah, we are always told that global division of labor, ruthless efficiency and hard work are the ultimate cures for poverty.
That's the promise of the globalized free market.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be simple. You work harder, you optimize your output, you cut your waste, and eventually you get a piece of that wealth.
But what if that is just a complete illusion? What if the real force keeping people poor isn't a lack of hard work at all?
Right. What if it's actually a hidden, almost mathematical game played with pricing power?
It is the ultimate contradiction of modern capitalism. I mean, it really is.
Because we are looking at a system where the actual physical value created at the very bottom of the chain somehow just evaporates before it ever reaches the pockets of the worker.
Yeah, the people doing the actual physical creation. And for the last 50 years, classical economics has basically patted these workers on the head and said, just get a little more efficient.
Right. Trim your costs. Improve your technical skills. They say that's how you win.
But the microdata we are about to explore today tells a completely different and, frankly, deeply counterintuitive story.
It's totally backwards. It turns out efficiency might actually be the biggest trap of all.
Which is crazy to think about. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are basically taking a sledgehammer to some of the most sacred, unquestioned assumptions in modern business.
We really are. We aren't looking at theoretical models today. We are looking at raw, incredibly guarded data.
Exactly. So our source material for this deep dive is a groundbreaking 2015 study conducted by 5 top economists.
Right. David Atkin, Azam Chaudhry, Shamila Chaudhry, Amit Khandelwal, and Eric Verhoogen.
And these guys didn't just sit in some ivory tower and run computer simulations.
No, they absolutely did not. They went directly to the dust, the heat, and the noise of Sialkot, Pakistan.
Sialkot, which is this fascinating, highly competitive industrial cluster where a massive chunk of the world's soccer balls are manufactured.
They investigated 135 different soccer ball manufacturing firms. And they got access to information that factory owners usually take straight to the grave.
Yeah, the methodology is precisely what makes this research so disruptive, I think.
It really is, because economists normally have to rely on assumptions. Private companies just do not hand over their actual profit margins to academics.
Right. But these researchers basically bypass the standard models entirely.
They spent years literally on the ground, knocking on doors, drinking tea with factory bosses, building deep trust.
They needed that trust to uncover the raw, unfiltered truth. They wanted to know exactly who makes money, down to the penny.
And the specific mechanics of exactly why they make it.
So our mission today is to completely shatter the illusion of those standard economic models.
We are going to look at direct, irrefutable ledger data. We're going to uncover the actual wealth code of global manufacturing.
You are going to learn why saving pennies on the factory floor is actually a trap that keeps you poor.
And you'll discover why a simple, physical plane ticket to Germany might just be the most valuable piece of manufacturing equipment on planet Earth.
I love that. But before we get into the ledgers from Pakistan, we really have to understand the fairy tale first.
Right. We have to understand the story the world, and specifically the academic world, has believed for decades.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand the fairy tale, we have to talk about how economists traditionally build their models of global trade.
Right. Because the global economy is infinitely complex. You have billions of transactions happening every second.
So to make sense of it, to actually do the math, economists have to create abstractions, right?
Exactly. They have to make certain structural assumptions. If they don't, the math just gets way too messy to calculate.
So what's the big one? I mean, what's the model that everyone relied on?
One of the biggest, most influential frameworks in recent trade economics is the Milits model. It was published in 2003.
Okay, the Milits model.
And at the very heart of models like this one is a highly convenient, incredibly neat mathematical assumption. It's the assumption of constant markups.
Okay, I need to stop you right there because whenever we start talking about academic models, my eyes tend to glaze over a bit.
Fair enough.
Let's translate constant markups. A markup is basically just your profit margin, right?
That's a good working definition, yeah.
It's the amount you charge the buyer above what it actually costs you to make the physical object.
Exactly. It's the amount you add on top of your production cost to capture your profit.
Okay. So the classical economic models basically assume that this markup is a constant multiplier across an entire industry.
Right. The underlying theory assumes that consumers have a constant elasticity of substitution.
And boom, there's the jargon. Constant elasticity of substitution.
I know.
You've got to break that down for me like I'm a 5-year-old trying to run a lemonade stand. What does that actually mean for the guy making the soccer ball?
Okay. It basically means the model assumes consumers will easily swap one product for another if the price changes.
Oh, okay. So no single company has the power to dramatically jack up their profit margins without losing all their customers.
Exactly. Therefore, the math assumes that if a company is bigger or richer or dominating the market, it is purely because they have higher technical efficiency.
Okay, so the model assumes they just figured out how to lower their costs through better machines or less waste.
Right. Because their costs are lower, they can sell more and grow bigger. But their actual profit percentage, that markup multiplier, is assumed to be roughly the same across the board.
So the fairy tale basically says the free market is a perfect meritocracy of efficiency.
Yes.
Like, if Company A is this huge, rich, sprawling factory, and Company B is a tiny, struggling workshop with a leaky roof, it's just because Company A is literally better at the physical act of manufacture.
Exactly. They are faster, they waste less raw material, and because they are cheaper to run, they win.
But their actual profit percentage, their markup, is assumed to be roughly identical.
That is the widespread assumption, yes. It paints a very clean picture. And previous empirical approaches relied heavily on this.
Because they couldn't get the real data.
Right. Economists would either estimate markups from the demand side by guessing how consumers might behave, or they would estimate from the supply side.
Okay, and what does the supply side mean here?
On the supply side, they usually assume that input adjustments are costless and that everyone faces the same exogenous prices.
Wait, exogenous prices? Meaning prices dictated entirely by the outside market, where the factory owner is just a price taker with absolutely zero negotiating power over their raw materials.
That's exactly it. The models assume you just look at the market, see the price of leather, see the price of a soccer ball, and you just operate within that fixed reality.
Right. But the 5 researchers behind our source material realized this reliance on structural assumptions was a massive blind spot.
A huge one.
So for decades, economists were effectively, well, guessing. Like, they were reverse engineering profit margins based on elaborate mathematical formulas instead of just looking at the actual bank accounts of the businesses.
They had to. Getting actual truthful profit data from private, fiercely competitive companies is notoriously difficult.
I mean, think about it. Do you want to tell a stranger exactly how much pure profit you make on every single item you sell?
Absolutely not. If a researcher walked into my business and asked for my exact profit margins, I'd either inflate the numbers to look incredibly successful, or I'd hide my real profits.
Exactly. So you don't get taxed, or so your competitors don't figure out your margins and undercut you. It's basically business suicide to just hand over your ledgers.
Precisely why economists relied on those structural assumptions. It's clean. It fits neatly into a spreadsheet. You don't have to navigate human suspicion.
But these researchers decided that neat academic theories were no substitute for messy, real-world reality.
No, they decided to physically knock on doors in Pakistan. They conducted a massive, multi-year field study right there in Sialkot.
They didn't just send a mail-in survey. They were actually there, on the ground, sweating in the factories.
They wanted to understand the entire production process from the ground up. They learned about the lamination, the cutting of the synthetic leather, the printing of the logos, the hand stitching.
They understood the business basically as well as the owners did.
Yeah, and because they spent years building that deep personal trust, they managed to get these factory bosses to open the vault.
They got the real numbers, the actual exit prices of the soccer balls. And the actual net profits, literally down to the single physical ball,
They did. They managed to track the true ledgers for 135 different firms.
which is just incredible. And this sets up the fundamental conflict of our discussion today.
Right. What happens when the theoretical mathematical model, the model that governs how we think about global trade and poverty, collides with the actual handwritten ledgers of 135 fiercely competitive factory owners?
Well, I'll tell you what happens. The model doesn't just break, it shatters. The assumptions are completely obliterated.
They really are.
So they finally get the books open. What's the very first thing that jumps out at them?
The first thing that jumps out is a staggering disconnect between costs and profits. Let's set the scene in Sialkot.
Okay, paint the picture.
You have 135 firms clustered tightly together geographically.
Oh.
They're all making soccer balls. Crucially, the technology here is completely transparent.
Right, so there are no secret patented machines. Everyone in town knows exactly how to cut the material.
Everyone knows how to stitch. They all draw from the exact same local pool of labor.
So in a highly concentrated industrial cluster like this, producing a highly standardized product, classical economics dictates that profit rates should be practically identical.
Yes, because if the technology is transparent and someone tries to charge way more for a standard soccer ball, the international buyer will just walk literally next door to the factory that charges the normal price.
It's the very definition of a free, competitive market keeping margins tight.
That is the textbook expectation. But the real numbers showed something completely different.
Give me the numbers.
Across the firms they analyzed for this specific data point, the average price of a soccer ball leaving the factory was 379.3 rupees.
Okay, so at the time of this study, that was about $3.79 in US dollars.
Right. The average markup, the pure profit on that ball, was 31.3 rupees. That equals an 8.26% profit rate.
Now, on the surface, an 8% margin sounds perfectly normal. It implies a highly competitive, tight sector. It looks like the market is functioning exactly as it should.
It looks normal until you examine the dispersion.
The dispersion, meaning the spread between the winners and the losers.
Exactly. The researchers didn't just look at the average. They looked at the top performers and compared them to the bottom performers.
So they took the 90th percentile, the absolute elite factories in the cluster, and compared them to the 10th percentile, the struggling workshops barely keeping the lights on.
Right. And here is the jaw-dropping fact. The top firms charge a markup that is 5.14 times higher than the bottom firms.
Wait, 5.14 times higher? Let that sink in for the listener for a second.
It's massive.
In the exact same dusty town, making the exact same category of product, using the exact same transparent stitching technology, one guy is pulling out 5 times the profit margin as the guy down the street.
Yes.
That is staggering. Let's put this in an everyday analogy. Imagine 2 coffee shops on the exact same street.
Okay, good analogy.
They buy the exact same roasted beans from the exact same local supplier. They use the same espresso machines. They pour the exact same standard latte.
Right.
But the owner of coffee shop A is secretly pulling 5 times more pure profit out of every single cup than the owner of coffee shop B.
Exactly.
How is that even possible? I mean, if coffee shop A is charging that much more, why aren't the customers rioting? Why don't they just walk 20 feet down the street to coffee shop B?
You've hit on the exact paradox that fascinated the researchers.
Yeah.
And the data gets even more damning for the classical economic models.
Because your first instinct might be, well, maybe coffee shop A is just way, way more efficient.
Right. Maybe they figured out how to use less milk or brew the espresso faster, so the production costs are incredibly low, and that's why their profit margin is so huge.
But the researchers tracked the actual production costs, too. What'd they find?
They found that the cost difference between the top firms and the bottom firms is only a factor of 2.45.
Oh, wow. So their actual manufacturing costs vary by a factor of 2.45, but their profit extraction varies by a factor of 5.14.
Exactly. To use a statistical term, they looked at the coefficient of variation.
Right.
The coefficient of variation for the markups is 0.73, but the coefficient of variation for the costs is only 0.45.
So the variation in how much profit these factory owners can magically extract absolutely crushes the variation in how much it costs them to make the ball.
Yes. This is a massive slap in the face to classical economics.
It totally is. It means the ultimate factor deciding who survives, who gets rich, and who starves in this town is not their production cost.
Right. It's not about who saves the most pennies on a factory floor by sweeping up scrap leather.
It is this wildly dispersed, almost magical ability to command a higher markup from the buyer.
This represents a fundamental shift in how we need to view business success in these global supply chains.
Yeah, the survival of the fittest in this environment isn't about being the most frugal or the most physically efficient producer.
No, it's entirely about pricing power. The dispersion in markups is significantly greater than the dispersion in costs.
Okay, so we've established that making the ball cheaper doesn't explain the massive wealth gap.
Right.
But surely scaling up the size of your factory helps, right? I mean, if these small firms are getting crushed on margins, why don't they just grow bigger to achieve economies of scale?
Well, this leads us to the next massive realization in the data, the big firm paradox and the concept of asymmetric elasticity.
Okay, I want to argue with you here for a second. We naturally assume that the Goliaths of any industry get massive by ruthlessly cutting costs.
Right, like the Walmart model.
Exactly. The Walmart model, or the Amazon model. The whole point of getting huge is that you use your massive scale to bully your suppliers into giving you cheaper raw materials.
That's the conventional wisdom.
You drop your per unit cost to rock bottom, and you undercut the little guys until they go out of business. You win by being cheap.
Are you telling me these massive factories in Pakistan just forgot how to negotiate?
You'd think so, right? Because the Walmart model is practically a religion in global business. We are deeply conditioned to believe that scale equals cheapness.
But the Sialkot ledgers tell a story that turns that completely upside down.
Completely. When the researchers plotted firm size, using the total number of employees as the proxy for how big the company was against their costs and their markups, they found a complete contradiction of the Walmart assumption.
What did they find?
Both average costs and average markups actually increase with firm size.
Hold on, that makes no sense. The bigger the factory, the higher their per unit costs.
Yes.
But the entire advantage of being a massive corporation in this space is supposed to be cost efficiency. It is incredibly counterintuitive. The larger firms in this cluster are absolutely not winning by being the cheapest producers.
So they actually have higher per unit costs than the tiny workshops.
They do, but, and this is the crucial part, they also have significantly higher markups. And the relationship between their size and these two factors is not equal.
Okay.
This brings us to what the researchers call asymmetric elasticity.
Okay, let's break down this elasticity math, because this feels like the secret code to how wealth is actually captured.
It really is.
The researchers found that the markup elasticity to firm size is 0.31, but the cost elasticity is only 0.16.
Right.
I want to make sure I'm fully understanding this. What does that actually mean in plain English for the factory owner?
It means that as a firm grows larger, its ability to extract pure profit accelerates significantly faster than its costs increase.
Okay.
Let's translate those elasticity numbers into a real-world scenario. Let's say a factory expands and grows its workforce by 10%. Because of this asymmetric relationship, its per unit costs will go up by roughly 1.6%.
Okay, so they grow 10% and their manufacturing costs creep up a little bit. 1.6%. I mean, that's a hit, but it's manageable.
But for that exact same 10% growth in firm size, its markups, its pure profit margins, surge by 3.1%.
Wow. So the growth in their profit extraction is almost double the growth in their costs.
Exactly. This completely violates our standard intuition about economies of scale.
Yeah, we are taught in basically every business school that you scale up to drive costs down.
But here, big factories aren't winning by being cheap. They're winning by being expensive.
And their capacity to extract massive profit margins grows twice as fast as their cost burden.
Yes.
But wait, this just raises a massive red flag for me. If they are bigger and they have more resources, why on earth are their costs going up in the first place?
That is the big question.
Are these big factories just bloated? Do they have terrible management? Do they have too many middle managers walking around with clipboards doing nothing while the small workshops run lean and mean?
It's a fair question.
Why does a physical soccer ball cost more to make in a massive successful factory than in a tiny struggling workshop?
That is the exact question the researchers had to answer, and it reveals the absolute genius of what the big firms are actually doing.
So they aren't just bloated?
No, the big firms aren't paying more because they are inefficient or bloated with middle management. They are paying more because they're playing an entirely different game on the exact same physical playing field.
Okay,
This brings us to the tale of two balls and the illusion of the standard product.
the tale of two balls. The quality monopoly. Paint this picture for us. Because up until now, we've been talking about a soccer ball as if it's just one universal thing.
Exactly, and that was a massive flaw in early economic thinking. A soccer ball is not just a soccer ball. When the researchers looked closely at the actual factory floors, they realized they needed to categorize the production into two distinctly different tiers.
Okay, what are the tiers?
First, you have the promotional ball. This is the cheap stuff. It uses fewer layers of cotton and polyester backing.
Okay.
And crucially, it uses cheap, locally produced artificial leather, locally called Rexin.
This is the ball you get for free with a fast food meal, or you buy for $4 in a plastic bin at a discount supermarket.
Right, it's the ball that gets deformed after you kick it against a wall 3 times.
Yeah, I know exactly the one you mean.
And then you have the premium tier, the match or training ball.
Okay, so what's the difference?
These balls require way more layers of backing for perfect shape retention. And most importantly, they use high-quality imported Rexin, often sourced from Japan or Korea.
Got it. So the physical materials are fundamentally structurally different.
Yes. So the researchers did something brilliant to test this bloated cost theory. They said, let's stop comparing apples to oranges. They isolated the cost of just the standardized promotional ball. They stripped away the fancy imported Japanese leather and the extra layers.
So they looked at the ledgers and said, let's look at what it costs every firm, both the massive Goliaths and the tiny Davids, to make the exact same cheap, basic promotional ball.
Exactly. And what happened to the math? The math completely changed.
Oh, yeah.
When they isolated the standardized promotional ball and controlled for those material inputs, the cost elasticity relative to firm size plummeted. It dropped all the way down to a measly 0.06. And statistically, it became barely significant.
Hold on. So when you force them to make the exact same cheap ball, the massive factory isn't really any more expensive to run than the tiny workshop.
Right.
Their core physical manufacturing cost is roughly the exact same.
Yes.
So the entire advantage or disadvantage of being a big corporation in terms of baseline production costs is essentially an illusion.
Exactly. The high average costs of the big firms that we saw earlier were an illusion caused entirely by the quality of their inputs.
Oh, I see.
The big firms have higher overall costs, primarily because they are buying expensive, imported, high-quality materials.
They haven't forgotten how to manage a factory floor. They have just pivoted their massive production power toward the premium match balls.
But that's it, exactly.
And here is the brutal punchline for the small factories. Why do the big firms pivot to the match balls?
Right. Why take the risk?
Why take on the risk of buying expensive imported materials? Because the markup on a premium match ball is a staggering 46% higher than the markup on a promotional ball.
This is a crucial finding for understanding wealth accumulation. The big firms aren't just making more things, they're making better things that command a vastly disproportionate premium from the buyer.
They actively transition out of the cutthroat low-end market and into the premium product space where the margins are incredibly fat.
Exactly.
But wait, it gets even worse for the little guys, doesn't it? I mean, it's not just a simple story of big firms make the fancy balls and small firms make the cheap balls.
No, it's not.
Because even if a small guy scrapes together the cash to buy the good leather, he still gets crushed.
Yes, unfortunately. The researchers found that even within the exact same category of ball, the big guys still win the margin war.
So if a big firm and a small firm both manage to produce a premium match ball, the big firm still charges a significantly higher markup for it.
Yes.
How does the elasticity math prove that?
Within just the match ball category, the markup elasticity to size is 0.28. And amazingly, even for the cheap promotional balls, the big firms manage a markup elasticity of 0.19.
So larger firms charge higher markups on average for two compounding reasons.
Right. First, they produce a much greater share of high-quality balls that inherently carry higher markups.
And second, they charge higher markups conditional on the ball type.
Exactly. Even when they sell the exact same tier of product to a buyer, they manage to extract more profit per unit than the small guy.
It is a ruthless system of double harvesting. They are basically double dipping.
They really are. The big firms achieve a dual victory over the market.
They harvest the high-margin premium category by buying the imported leather. And D, they harvest a higher margin per unit within that category.
They are double dipping into the global wealth pool.
Meanwhile, look at what happens to the small factories. They are
Yeah.
totally trapped.
Yes, they are left in a brutal race to the bottom.
They are trampling each other, fighting for pennies in the low-end promotional market, squeezing their own margins and their workers just to survive another month.
While the big factories a mile up the road are swimming in a 46% premium.
It perfectly explains the crushing inequality we see within this single industrial cluster.
Right. The small firms are playing a desperate game of pennies, while the big firms are playing a game of dollars.
The physical geography is the same, but the economic realities are just light years apart.
So this brings us to the ultimate question. The million-dollar question for anyone who cares about development or poverty or just how business actually works.
How do you escape? If you are the owner of that small, struggling factory, how do you make the leap from the bottom-feeding, penny-pinching promotional balls to the ultra-profitable imported leather match balls?
Well, if you ask a classical economist or a Western business consultant, they'll give you a very predictable answer.
They'll tell you, innovate, become more technically efficient, optimize your factory floor, eliminate waste.
But if you believe that narrative, the Sialkot data is about to deeply, deeply disappoint you.
Because this leads us to the most mind-blowing part of the entire study.
The efficiency trap versus the ticket to Germany.
The researchers wanted to rigorously test this idea, right? Does technical, physical efficiency actually drive these massive markups?
So they measured it. They didn't just ask about it. They tracked highly specific physical metrics on the factory floors.
Give me an example.
For example, they tracked exactly how many ball panels a worker could carefully cut from a single sheet of raw artificial leather without wasting any material. They also measured the total physical output per employee. This is the absolute definition of factory floor technical efficiency.
Basically, how much physical product can you squeeze out of your raw materials and your human labor?
Right.
Now, you would think the guy who can cut the absolute most panels from a single sheet of leather is an absolute genius.
You would.
He is saving his boss money on every single sheet that comes through the door. That guy and that factory should be dominating the market.
Their profit margins should be going through the roof because they have zero waste.
That's the logical assumption. But the market data is completely blind to his effort.
Completely. The researchers ran the numbers, and the correlation between these meticulous technical efficiency metrics, like the number of balls cut per sheet of material, and a firm's actual markup is a ghostly 0.02.
Wait, a 0.02. Let's just pause on that for a second. In statistics, a correlation of 0.02 is meaningless.
It is essentially zero. It's random noise.
It is entirely statistically insignificant. It means that hyper-optimizing your factory floor, squeezing every last drop of physical efficiency out of your workers and your raw materials, does practically nothing to increase your pricing power.
It doesn't move the needle on your profit margin one bit.
I really want to make sure you, the listener, absorb the tragedy of this reality. Imagine a worker sweating on a factory floor in Sialkot.
The air is thick, the fans are barely working.
Right. They are perfectly optimizing every square inch of artificial leather. They are working with surgical precision to increase their technical efficiency.
They are doing everything the free market and classical economics tells them to do to pull themselves out of poverty.
And what do they actually gain from it? Absolutely zero pricing power. Their boss's profit margin doesn't budge.
They stay completely trapped at the bottom of the value chain.
The ledger math proves definitively that hard work and physical efficiency on the factory floor do not create wealth.
So if efficiency is a trap, what actually does create the wealth?
The researchers had to look for other variables outside the physical manufacturing process, and they found the real driver.
It wasn't anywhere on the factory floor. It was in marketing and channel access.
Specifically, they looked at whether a firm's owner had attended the ISPO trade fair.
ISPO, what is that for the uninitiated?
ISPO is the massive premier international sports goods trade fair held annually in Munich, Germany.
Oh.
It is where all the major global brands, buyers, and distributors gather. The researchers found that the correlation between a firm's markup and whether the owner took a physical flight and attended that single trade fair in Germany is a massive 0.48.
Wait, 0.48. Compare that to the 0.02 for factory efficiency.
I know, it's wild.
Yeah.
A physical plane ticket to Munich is literally 24 times more correlated with high profit margins than being physically good at making a soccer ball.
This completely breaks my brain.
The moat protecting these wealthy businesses isn't technology. The moat isn't manufacturing skill. The moat is literally a plane ticket.
Furthermore, they looked at export destinations. The data showed that the share of balls a factory sold specifically to high-income countries correlates positively with their markups at 0.20 and with their costs at 0.22.
I want to dig into the human element of this. Why is that correlation so high? How does that conversation in Munich actually go?
Right, because it's not just about showing up, is it? It's the sociology of business.
Think about what it takes for a factory owner from Sialkot to go to ISPO. You have to be able to afford the flight and the hotel in Munich, which is a massive psychological and financial barrier.
Absolutely. You have to navigate the visa process. You probably need to speak conversational English or hire a translator.
You need to know how to wear the right suit, how to buy a round of drinks for European executives, how to navigate Western corporate culture.
It's about cultural signaling as much as it is about soccer balls.
That is exactly it. It is about establishing trust and reducing perceived risk for the buyer.
Right. If you are a buyer for a major European sports brand and you need to order 100,000 premium match balls for a marketing campaign, who are you going to trust?
Are you going to wire a massive deposit to a faceless email address from a small workshop you've never seen?
Or are you going to give the contract to the guy you just had a beer with in Munich who looked you in the eye, handed you a glossy brochure, and spoke your business language?
You give it to the guy in Munich every single time, because if the order gets messed up, your job is on the line.
You are paying a premium for the psychological safety of that relationship.
And that relationship is something the highly skilled, hyper-efficient worker back on the floor in Sialkot simply cannot replicate.
Precisely. What we're looking at is a concept we can call the marketing and quality double helix.
The double helix, I like that.
It is a self-reinforcing, closed-loop system of privilege and access. Let's trace how this helix spirals upward.
Okay, walk me through it.
Step 1. The factory boss leverages his initial capital to buy a plane ticket to Munich. He walks the floor at ISPO, he shakes hands, builds relationships, and enters the trust circle of wealthy global clients.
Okay, so step 2. Those rich clients from high-income countries have specific demands. They don't want the cheap promotional balls. They demand high-quality professional gear.
Right. They demand the imported Korean or Japanese Rexine.
Step 3. Because the boss has established the relationship and secured the initial commitment, he has the safety to buy those expensive imported materials.
His factory transitions production and delivers the premium match ball.
Step 4. Because it's a premium product sold to a wealthy client who trusts the brand relationship they built in Munich, the factory is able to extract that massive 46% higher markup.
They make an absolute killing on the margin.
And finally, step 5. With those massive profits, the factory expands. They hire more workers. They become one of the big firms we talked about earlier.
And because they are bigger and have vastly more capital, it's even easier for them to go to Germany next year, build even more relationships, and demand even higher markups within that premium category.
It is a totally closed loop of wealth generation. It spirals upward, completely detached from the baseline technical efficiency of the stitching.
And what about the small firm, the guy who stayed in Pakistan, diligently optimizing his cutting sheets and trying to save every scrap of leather?
He's locked out. He doesn't have the cash flow for the flight to Munich. He doesn't speak the right corporate language. He doesn't have the channel access.
The data tells us that small firms without international marketing access are locked out of this wealth loop forever.
It absolutely does not matter how skilled their hands are. It doesn't matter if they are the greatest, fastest soccer ball stitchers in human history.
Without the channel, without the buyer relationship, they are nothing but a commodity.
This is the ultimate refutation of the classical theory.
It really is. Now, the researchers are careful academics, so they do note that we must use caution with correlations. It is entirely possible that the firms that have the capital and the foresight to go to ISPO are also just generally better managed across the board.
Sure, but the stark, undeniable contrast between the 0.48 correlation for the trade show and the 0.02 correlation for technical efficiency is just impossible to ignore.
Markups are not a simple function of quality-neutral technical efficiency. The ledgers prove it. It's about access to the people with the money.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. Let's pull back from the dusty streets of Sialkot and look at the macro reality of our entire global economy.
Because this deep dive isn't really just about soccer balls.
No, it's not. This is about coffee beans in Colombia. It's about clothing manufacturing in Bangladesh. It's about the circuit boards in our smartphones assembled in Shenzhen.
We started this conversation by wondering why the hands that stitch the objects don't hold the wealth.
And the microdata from these 135 factories proves exactly why. The global free market is not a meritocracy of hard work.
It's not a meritocracy of technical efficiency either. It is a game of channel privilege.
It's about information barriers, and it's about who controls the brand trust.
If we extrapolate these empirical findings, it completely changes how we should think about industrial policy, global development, and how we try to alleviate poverty.
Think about how much money governments and international NGOs spend trying to help small manufacturers in developing nations.
Frequently, well-meaning organizations will try to help small factories by subsidizing new technology.
Right. They will grant them loans to buy faster cutting machines or better sewing equipment, try and make the factory more efficient.
But based on everything we've just discussed from the Sialkot data, that kind of intervention is essentially useless.
If you give a small factory a faster cutting machine, but you don't solve their marketing problem, if you don't give them access to the wealthy buyers in Germany, what actually happens?
They just produce cheap, low-margin promotional balls slightly faster.
They still have zero pricing power. They are still trapped in an 8% margin fighting over pennies while the big guys are pulling down massive premiums.
You haven't helped them capture any new wealth, you've just helped them tread water more efficiently.
Exactly. Without solving the market access problem, technical subsidies simply create zero margin capacity.
The machines run faster, but the bank accounts don't grow.
This dynamic connects perfectly to a very famous concept in global economics known as the smile curve.
Yes, the smile curve. It visualizes exactly where financial value is captured in a global supply chain.
Imagine a U shape, like a smile on a graph. On the high left side of the smile, you have the pre-production value, so R&D, design, and patents.
And on the high right side of the smile, you have post-production value. Branding, marketing, sales channels, and retail relationships.
And at the very bottom, in the deep, flat valley of the curve, you have actual physical manufacturing and assembly.
The bottom of the smile is where the physical work actually happens. It's the sweat, the dust, the taped fingers.
And it's where the absolute least amount of money is made.
The people controlling the brand design on the left and the people controlling the customer relationship on the right are completely siphoning all the wealth out of the middle.
The Sialkot data proves this reality at a microscopic, undeniable level. The physical act of making the ball is trapped at the bottom of the curve.
The act of flying to Germany and securing the buyer is at the top right of the curve. And the top right takes all the profit.
And this realization leads us to a fascinating and somewhat chilling question for our immediate future.
Because we are currently entering an era of unprecedented technological disruption.
Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and advanced robotics are rapidly coming online and dropping in price.
We are moving toward a world where the physical differences in human manufacturing skill will be completely erased by machines.
Right. Think about it. Very soon, a robotic arm in Sialkot will cut the synthetic leather with the exact same microscopic precision as a robotic arm in Ohio or a robotic arm in Shenzhen.
Technical efficiency will be perfectly commoditized. It will be universally equal everywhere.
So if technical efficiency no longer matters at all, what happens to global wealth?
If the physical production becomes entirely uniform and fully automated, then the only thing left to determine profit margins will be pricing power.
And as the Sialkot ledgers have shown us, pricing power is controlled entirely by marketing, channel access, and brand trust.
The global pricing power will be completely monopolized by those who control the networks and the buyer relationships.
Today, the moat protecting the wealthy factory owner is a physical plane ticket to Germany.
It's expensive, it's hard, but it is tangible. You can touch it. If you save up enough, you can theoretically buy it.
But tomorrow, will the moat be an invisible, impenetrable algorithmic wall?
Will the power to connect with a wealthy buyer be locked behind AI search algorithms, proprietary digital marketplaces, and digital gatekeepers owned by a handful of massive tech monopolies?
If you thought the inequality between the big and small factories in Pakistan was brutal, imagine a world where the channel access isn't just an expensive flight.
Imagine it's algorithmically sealed off from anyone who doesn't own the platform or pay the digital toll.
Are we destined to repeat this history of wealth extraction on an even more brutal digital scale?
The math hidden in the Sialkot ledgers gives us a very clear empirical warning. Wealth does not naturally flow to the hardest worker or the most efficient physical producer.
No, it doesn't.
It flows exclusively to the one who controls the transaction. As global channels become more complex and digitized, that control will only concentrate further into the hands of the few.
Keep questioning the surface-level stories you were told about how the economy works. The world isn't always a neat, fair equation where hard work equals success.
Sometimes, the most important variable isn't the sweat on your brow or the speed of your hands.
It's the invisible mathematical game being played over your head. Keep looking for the real numbers.
Next time you buy something, think about those calloused hands at the bottom of the smile curve.
And ask yourself who is really designing the game.